I may raise our experience in Thailand, and maybe you can comment or advise. From my experience in Thailand, when we propose a project greater than 1 billion baht, which is about 40 million, about 25 million US, it's become extremely difficult to get approval because it's a kind of sensational barrier, emotional barrier of the budget funding agency when we break through 1 billion baht or 25 million US. So our challenge for our generations is we try to get people used to these figures, $25 million project. That is one experience we have in this country. And I very much like your comments on at least we should have expenditure of R&D about 1% per GDP. And as actually Dr. Sakharin...
I actually said 2%.
Yeah, actually...
I mean, just not to be quoted
yes, I think
developed
country, they have 3%, as you mentioned, and now we are 0.25%. And our generation very much like to raise these figures. So, and we have a feeling that 1% is the next goal that we would like to get into reality. And I believe in this country, we have a number of people ready to take the challenge of challenging the a kind of mega project in our sense. So I think if you agree or you can help tell the public in general, wherever you go, that a country like Thailand, we should raise our R&D expenditure to higher than present. 1% is a good target. Actually, this discussion has been already started and going on in the country, but it's very difficult to get political.
I was more concerned. It's not only the level of funding, it's the distribution of funding that concerns me. So let me give you my experience in the distribution of rare resources, okay? And the balance that you can try to achieve between elitism and populism, okay? So in Hubble Space Telescope, we had very restricted time to give away. We normally had requests for 7 times as much time as we had to give away. So we divided the time, roughly speaking, I mean, these are not correct numbers, but roughly speaking, into thirds, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And one group would receive 1 hour, suppose, okay? This is the lowest group. And use up their third of the time with 1 hour. Then the next group would receive 10 hours. So 1/10 as many people or group or researchers could be supported at that level. And then a very small group would receive 100 hours, okay? Well, it turns out that this was a balance, if you wish, that satisfied a lot of people, giving them access to this telescope, very precious telescope and so forth, but it preserved the ability to give enormous amount of time for projects that were really of great community interest. For instance, the very deepest exposure by Hubble were done that way. What I'm suggesting is that when you have limited resources, you subject them to triage, basically, and that it is that balance, this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. The tendency, unfortunately, when the resources are limited, is to eliminate the top 2/3 and just distribute things equally. That will not work. Okay, that's all I'm trying to say. So it's a balance between this aspect that and where should you put that particular where your wisdom, and I mean, you would try to get all of the advice you can from anybody you can, but basically it has to come from the bottom, that people want to do those things. I mean, you have to have these people that are obsessed, work 14 hours a day because they can't help it themselves, and so forth. Right? Yeah.
David Ruffalo, Mahidol University. Referring to your answer to Professor Goff's question about starting with small projects initiated by a young scientist, what if that scientist is not skilled in management? What would you recommend, or if he or she has trouble managing in his or her spare time while remaining an active scientist?
Well, it will fail. And as far as I'm concerned, that's it. What I'm trying to say is, why should we spend limited resources in trying to rescue failures? Let's point them to ensure success. Now, that's the harsh thing. You can also think of sending them to school. I mean, to management school, you can have many remedial actions, but what I'm trying to say is basically the reason that you want to start with many small projects is to allow to people the freedom to fail. They will typically, by the way, not, if they have the character, they will not get out of the field. They will have learned from their failure and do better next time. So maybe you give them another chance at the same level, but you don't promote them to manage at a level where they are totally incompetent. Okay? So I hope that is a reasonable answer.
When we run a research organization or S&T organizations, we evaluate and we try to monitor and evaluate progress. The easiest way of doing it is publications, number of publications, number of patents, and all that. When you look at running a successful, for example, Hubble space stations, is these publications and something like this come into any of the criteria for success or evaluation?
Yes. We adopted a four-way system. I don't know how to do it. Okay. We would consider whether a person was successful as an individual scientist, then whether a person was successful as a leader of scientific group. Then from the service side, whether a person was a valuable contributor to engineering, operation, or whatever you, and whether he had the management or she had the management skill to direct a substantial fraction of the operation. So there were these four criteria. And in university, you wouldn't ask for, in fact, well, you might ask for the functional equivalent, which is teaching, and give great importance to their teaching ability. At least in the United States, this doesn't count for anything. I mean, it's a... So, but if you are in a group which is trying to carry out a mission, then these four things are important. And we would not assign tenure to anybody who didn't have at least three of these qualities. That is, either he would contribute as an individual to functional work, but he would lead as a scientist, small group, or vice versa, he would contribute as a scientist, but he would lead in the functional work. Such people were given tenure at the institution, okay? And the judgment was based on two different groups, one evaluating their functional work, and one evaluating, like a faculty, evaluating their intellectual work. People who were given tenure basically were required to do research, meaning they couldn't just have been ex-scientists who now happen to work in the organization. So both things were judged. discussed by the faculty, so to speak, by the senior scientist, recommended to the director, who then was subjected to an outside review group to assign tenure. Okay, so it was so we took into account all of that. But the most specific thing that I wanted to make is everybody was allowed to play, encouraged to play, meaning doing his own research, but everybody had to serve. Okay? There were no privileged position.
คำถามแรกก็คือว่าเขาคิดว่าโครงการใหญ่ๆทางวิทยาศาสตร์อะไรที่สำคัญที่สุดในสำหรับศตวรรษนี้ครับที่สังคมโลกที่ควรจะช่วยกันสร้างขึ้นมาเพื่อที่จะสร้างสันติภาพขึ้น อันที่สองคือว่าเราจะ
แรกก่อนแล้วกันนะครับ not for ordinary for contributing towards peace what do you think is the most important mega project
That's a sociological question which I don't feel I'm qualified to answer. If I had to answer as a scientist right now, I would think that the development of renewable forms of energy would be the most important thing. Whether that will contribute to peace or not, that's a different issue. And I wouldn't know how to answer that one. There is another one which is a little more abstruse, but let me try it. There has been a lot of studies done recently on mind and brain correlation. And I do not know whether it's fantasy or hope that through these studies we can get to understand better the human emotions, the organic basis or the biological basis or the genetic basis of human emotions, with some hope for corrective therapy, let's say, or whatever. I would find that if I were a young man, I would actually try to get involved in that kind of study. I find that this would be of a different kind than what has been done up to now, that is really trying to understand ourselves as human beings, I mean, as an intelligent human being. And there is, for instance, the Welfare Institute in London, who is doing a tremendous job putting together a lot of different technologies and disciplines. I mean, they have psychiatrists, they have CAT scanning experts, they have imaging, image reconstruction guys, archival guys, etc., physiologists. And the aim is to try to understand, cure perhaps epilepsy. That would be a low-level type of achievement, but more important could be the study of what I said before. That would certainly, that might again contribute toward peace. But okay, there was a second question.
Yes, I think if you repeat that very slowly, you do okay. Try again. Second question.
คงรบกวนอาจารย์ช่วยแปลอีกครั้งได้
ผมคิดว่าโอเคก็ได้ครับ
Okay, the second question is how should we manage and make a scientific project to be useful for ordinary people, because many kind of research that scientists discover do not support for the social needs. Maybe you have some suggestions for this.
I still didn't quite get it. Please translate. Please tell me again.
It's a bit difficult. He's asking เอาตรงอีกทีได้ไหมครับ
ก็คือว่าเราจะบริหารจัดการโครงการใหญ่ยังไงเพื่อที่จะ support กับความต้องการของชุมชนหรือว่าประชาชนทั่วไปครับเพราะว่างานวิจัยหลายชิ้นที่นักวิจัยหรือว่านักวิทยาศาสตร์ได้ค้นพบเนี่ยมันไม่ได้ตอบสนองต่อสังคมครับ
Okay. His question is how do we manage to have good mega project which would directly or be more useful towards ordinary people, social people. He feels that most mega projects do not have impact to the small people, I guess. That's.
Well, again, I mean, I have no wisdom to communicate to anybody. I'll tell you my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that most sociological problems, most of the problem of poor people are social, and political, not technical. And the reason why I said that I was hesitant to say that, better understanding, better rational understanding of the human mind would provoke peace is because it's all obvious that rationality will prevail. I mean, okay? On the other hand, I think that we can help. And I think that, for instance, it's been interesting to find out the reaction of ordinary people to Hubble. And you can somehow mistreat ordinary people if you think that they are stupid. They are completely open to the wonder of nature. There is an amazing amount of interest in the United States about Hubble. I mean, you go to a cab driver and you ask him to drive you to the Hubble Institute, and he wants to know what you found out, and he had seen this picture, and so forth. And it is really gone down amazingly deep. Now, you can do that with any branch of science, I think, provided you are willing to take the time to actually explain it and not just try to. One of the things I didn't like about the NASA PR effort was that they would say, we found black holes. Now, normal people have no idea how the sun works. I mean, so you tell a black hole, it sounds like black magic. So at the Institute, we carried out a broad program of education, which went like this. We would say, we would have 3 parts in a program, suppose. One was we would show a young lady that has been working as a programmer, but at the same time she's going to school to become a graduate student and so on. So it was a kind of role model that, particularly in black schools, we would go and show them a black lady so that the kids could identify and say, oh, but I could do that too. So that was one thing. The other thing is we would say what was the discovery, okay? And then try to have a third part, which was really pedagogical, in which we said, by black hole, these people mean such and such and such because that's how stars evolved and so forth. And there were people who were trained pedagogists who teach how to teach science. They were involved in doing these programs. They received very large diffusion through the media because there was a lot of, basically we gave them a lot of pictures and then they could make stories about it and so forth. And so what was the net effect? Well, I would think that it added something to their life, that not only of bread liveth man, man lives, but also of ideas and thoughts. And so we gave it to them, and somehow I felt that it was a good thing that we were doing for them. Is it a good thing? I don't know. I mean, it's okay.
Dr. Swat, you were going to ask something.
I have a question regarding the problem of the mirror problem of the Hubble telescope, and also the mishaps on the space shuttles. In retrospect, did we learn what were the actual causes of those, and how would we have done differently in order to prevent those problems?
Okay. I think there was no reason to send up Hubble with shuttle or to make it man-maintainable. A preferred way to do the astronomy would have been to have a fully automated spacecraft which then could fail and you would replace with a new one. It would in fact have been cheaper to do that than going and repairing it with shuttle. Okay? So if you ask the scientists how would they have done it differently, we would not have used shuttle and the manned program to do things that could be done cheaper and better maybe automatically. And so at the moment, Hubble is the last one of the spacecraft that is going to be serviced by man, not the first. Now, we are also developing means to service spacecraft automatically, but they have to be designed from the beginning in such a way that they can be serviced automatically. And this is part is due to the fact that we want to put them very far from Earth at L2, that point. So that was one point. The other point you asked is what would we do differently? After the clear goal of going to the moon was established and achieved, NASA found itself without a goal, without a clear goal, and with a tremendous ability to go ahead and the desire for institutional survival. Okay? All of this were. Now, for some reason, the idea prevailed of having a reusable spacecraft because it was going to be cheap. It was going to make space cheap. We would develop this spacecraft, we would use it like a plane, and it would fly up and down and bring up a lot of stuff. 60 flights a year was the predicted idea, and so it would make space cheap, and then it could be open to commercial exploitation, tourism, whatever. Now, this was total nonsense, I mean, because it forced the design of a shuttle, which is very complicated, in part because there are people in it. I mean, it would have been, the shuttle can fly by itself. It doesn't need the people. It would be much easier to fly on automatic pilot, but the people were needed. And the idea was that without that, we couldn't get support for a national space program, that this was the only thing that kept people interested. So that was a mistake. It was a mistake in the sense that there was no appropriate, how to say, marketing study. That is, did you really want 60 flights a year? Do you have the money to support them? Can it be done technologically? I mean, it's just as if you try to start aviation within 10 years, instead of taking 50 years to develop okay. So that was a mistake. And the other mistake was fuzzy thinking. If we had a goal to go to Mars, and you had many steps on the way, and you keep asking, but what I'm doing right now, is that useful to go to Mars? There will be a very focused program, but the various steps that you make would all build the one on top of the other in a coherent way. Instead, what was said was that there was a lot of waving of hands. We're going to build a station, we don't know what we're going to do with it, but it's going to be a necessary step to go to the moon. Well, that was nonsense. Nobody's going to use the station to go to the moon. Even now, returning back to the moon, the station is not going to be used at all. So it was just words without any content behind them. And in fact, we had the example of the Mir Soviet station, which did nothing. Just went up there, they had people hanging around, they learned nothing. So we didn't have to redo the mistake, but we did. So it's fuzzy thinking, imprecise goals, and that's why I'm saying in addition to the individual goals, you have to have a vision that you are going to develop, even if it is far away. It means it gives meaning to the goals, to the achievement of the goals. Those are the mistakes we made, I think. And the last mistake was that somebody made a stupid decision that we were going to use shuttle as a transportation system for everything, including military stuff. The military quite quickly pointed out that they could not assure the defense of the country if this was going to be the case, and so they developed their own launchers. The scientists couldn't do that. So we were forced to use the shuttle, more than wanting to. Also, when it works, it's a wonderful vehicle. It has tremendous weightlifting capability, much more than the Russian system. So it was a great vehicle. It's just very hard and very expensive.
You mentioned about renewable energy could be one good future project for this century. Long time ago, I guess NASA project talking about setting up a big solar panel in the space and sending microwave back to Earth.
Yes.
Do you have any comments on that?
I don't want to comment on that. What I had in mind was hydrogen burning fusion, okay? Or deuterium or whatever, or tritium, but I was thinking of nuclear fusion as the next step that we can do.
May I ask from the layman perspective then, what is the most important qualifications or characteristic for the manager to run make a scientific project successfully? So in your point of view. Thank you.
I think that management is by and large application of common sense and some training in personal skills. So I think that then if you assume that you give management of large projects to people who can manage, then the next important thing is that they be technically competent in the area they are supposed to be managing, so that they can make independent, qualitative judgment and after all of the advice, but make decision based on informed judgment. If they don't have that, they cannot have the respect of their staff, nor can they make decisions and assess what they are being told by their staff. So I would say that technical competence, management competence is necessary, technical competence is absolutely vital also. And there aren't that many. So you better call a large number and find a few.
Okay. Maybe you may tell us about statistics of the failure ratio and successful ratio of the mega project you know so far.
Well, that's awfully hard, but all I can tell you is that.
Because my meaning is Thomas Edison said a long time ago, among 100 experiments, 99 failed, but you learn from failure. But in this country, we are not allowed to fail 99 times.
No, that's a problem actually. That is. See, it's a funny thing, and I can only say it. It is easier to sell mega project to the Congress of the United States than it is to sell an ensemble of small projects. Because the small projects, you don't know what they are. I mean, you can't, right? Now, in order to sell a mega project then to the Senate of the United States, however, you must have the support of the astronomical community, for instance, or, the physics community or whatever. So that means that these projects, when you do them, have to have something for everybody, okay? So they become Christmas trees with all, the lights and everything. Now that complicates the technical nature of the project and also increases the cost, which then requires even more selling, right, to the Congress, to et cetera, et cetera. That is unfortunately a kind of a self-defeating thing, because I mean, there is no mission we are doing now that costs less than $1 billion. I mean, this is where we are at. I think that we should go back to a little bit more discipline and have lots more small satellites. That gives you, okay, that allows you to fail once in a while. The other one, once you have done all of that selling, all of this thing, all of this expectation, you can't afford to fail. So now you have to have incredible control on everything that is done, right, because you can't afford failure. That gets very painful, I mean, and overruns and delays, and I mean, imagine the people who are deciding now at NASA to fly the shuttle again. I mean, who is going to put his life, his career on the line, saying, I believe you're ready to fly? They say, well, but we have to wait to ascertain this and to do that, and on and on and on. The astronauts actually normally are more willing to take risks than the managers and the technical people. Talking about the mirror of Hubble and so forth, I just was member of a committee that recommended to NASA to go back with the astronauts to fix Hubble again, as they have done before successfully. And this was a committee composed of admirals, of astronauts, of statisticians, of risk analysts, cost analysts, and on and on and on. And we came out very strong, said, do it. NASA may or may not do it, I don't know. So there is no way I think, to reduce risk. But I think, again, honesty, clarity, having people not afraid. I used to actually get very upset when people knew that something was wrong and they wouldn't tell me. I thought that was the problem, not that there was a problem, because there's a problem every day in a large project. I mean, that's quite obvious. But if you're told, then you can do something about it. If the person is afraid to tell you, or uncomfortable, which many technical people are, uncomfortable about personal confrontations, for instance. That's right? So I don't know, I think that's also a cultural problem, right? You tend to be nice to each other here, I notice. I tend to be more brutal. So it's going to be harder for you to you don't know what you are doing. I mean, in this ASNE, this little company, we used to tell, I used to participate to meetings with graduate students and so forth, and they would tell me, you don't know what you're doing. This is a stupid idea. And I would say, you're right. I mean, right? So tell me what. Now, if you can have that kind of openness, then you do very well.
Can you give a comment on the new NASA's mission? Two of them, I think one of them is going back to the moon, and the second one is send a human to Mars in 2020.
Okay, I think I'm not terribly enthusiastic about the idea of the moon because basically it's the lunar resources are harder to utilize than Mars resources, maybe. So I feel that if we had an expedition to Mars, there is some opportunity utilizing Mars resources to create a self-sustaining colony, ultimately. So I would like to see that as the long-term goal. And I would support that. The moon, I find it, you know, maybe it's interesting, but I don't think it teaches us to go to Mars. That's the problem. So it deviates resources from this very long-term goal. The other problem is that, you know, it's important to remember that the pyramids were built only in 20 years or so. This allowed to the pharaoh that wanted to have the pyramid built to be alive and make sure that they would build this pyramid. Now, suppose you had to delay the building of the pyramid for 300 years, or for instance, or 200 years. Then the next pharaoh was not as interested in building Cheops pyramid as Cheops himself might have been. So one of the problems we have in this very long-term program of space exploration is maintaining a cultural continuity and a commitment to a program that takes more, I mean, let alone more than 1 year funding cycles or 5-year funding cycle, but a generational commitment that goes beyond our lifetimes. But apart from that, I think that it would be important for mankind to establish jointly, I think, it should be a world enterprise, not a US enterprise, a colony on Mars.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Actually, this is kind of a follow-up question to the other question that's asked before about, okay, we talk about this organization. We already invested tons of money here. Now what we have a lot of human resources, a lot of new scientists. But the question is, most of us are pretty young and pretty new. We lack of experience. Most of us just got out of college. We don't really know what's really happening in the real world. So we got here. And most of our senior scientists, right now they are more in the upper management level. They're not in the level of getting your hand dirty anymore. So, and now the question is sometimes, some group, we have lack of direction. We don't really know, you know, where to go, what to do. Sometimes it ended up with a lot of small projects. Or even, I mean, some of us might have big project. We might call ourselves principal investigator. But do we really qualify to do that? And I found sometimes it's very difficult in terms of how to manage us too. I believe that a lot of us are actually talented, but some of our managers, like let's say, we gotta admit that a lot of PhD students, we are sometimes could be pretty egotistical. It's like, hey, I'm good too, you know? You are managers, you are my boss, just because you show up 2 years before me. And like, am I following your order? Am I doing what you think that is good to be done? So my question would be, how would we really utilize the talents of this young scientist?
I should take careful notes. Please.
In the complaint and a question.
Well, I will try to respond it actually. I mean, I don't know what's right and wrong, but it does happen in real life that some people are have better vision than others. They receive support and then, together with others, try to do something. Now, what I was trying to explain before about this, this total intellectual honesty with each other that occurred, for instance, when we had Uhuru launched this little satellite, which was very, very productive. I was the old man. I mean, and I was, let's see, this was 70, so I was 39 years old. I was the old man. And then everybody else was 30, 28, something like that. And everybody tried to contribute to the best of his ability or her ability. I don't think there were supremacy issues, so to speak, meaning that somehow or other I had to, punish people or something. We would have enormous discussion, really very bitter discussion, and then come to a decision which was more or less a joint decision. I mean, with some weight given to experience and responsibility and so forth, and then we would execute to the best of our ability to do that. We weren't always right, but 50% right is good. I mean, it's better than throwing a thing. Now, it is through this participative management, I really believe in participative management, that you are learning what management is all about. Because you can't just be a spoiled brat and say, I want to do what I want to do. Fine, but then create a condition where you can do that, or if you can't do that on your own, you must be a rational person. That is, you must say, okay, I'm allowed to work in this project, I have to produce this and that, I will learn, I have people I respect to work with, I'm learning and I'm teaching both continuously. And that's what really happens in groups that work well together. So this struggle for supremacy, it's, normally is whoever knows leads. That's what you should have in mind. That is, if somebody, an undergraduate comes to you with a good idea, say, you're right, let's do it. And you don't have to feel offended or something. And in fact, the point that, that was made by the president of Harvard was that Harvard was a great university because the authority of ideas prevailed, not the idea of authority. Okay? And that was, I think, a very important point. So it's not an answer, there is no recipe for that, but okay. The other thought I had was, if you're trying to train young people to do work, I mean, in areas where you're not terribly experienced, ship them abroad, but then make damn sure that when they are ready, you provide them with the opportunity here to do things. Because otherwise, you're just ensuring an export of very trained people, which will be very dangerous. Well, I don't know. Maybe okay. Fine. Thank you. Thank you. There was one more. Could we?
Please, yes, yeah.
I'm a little tired. Yes.
I'm sorry. One last one.
Last
Please,
one.
yes.
Sure, I'll take the honor to the last question.
We have to leave. So last question, okay? I'll be short. I promise.
My name is Sursit. I work for Intel in California as a GM of technology and operations. So actually I'm on vacation, but it's an honor to come and talk to Professor Giacconi. So I try to relate what you speak today to what we can use it in Intel. The first question is, if I look at the terminology of a mega scientific project, many of the projects at Intel can belong to that category, but the difference is on the manufacturing and high volume. So the conditions that you mentioned, not to overpromise and try to not take patently unfeasible path as an aim of a project, as a condition for failure success. Actually, at Intel, we tend to use that oftenly to try to break the limits of physics. So my first question is, do you think that could be, from your personal experience, could be a major flaw of our organization moving forward in the next generation technology?
No, I'm sure your organization is only going to put a small fraction of its resources of profits into such ventures.
13 is actually 13%.
Okay, so, and the stockholders allow that kind of loss or investment, and that's all right. In fact, that's great. It's to confuse Okay, I think the organization would be in trouble if you took on the job of producing the 97% or 87% which is left on the basis of unknown technology, because you couldn't commit, right? If you committed to something, then you're really open to tremendous failure. So I think you really have to, what I meant was, every scientist, every physicist I talked to, right, about Star Wars knew that it wouldn't work. Automatic, we knew it. It didn't take a genius to figure that one out, nor very long explanation. If you go against your instinct or your better knowledge in physics, then your ability to make breakthrough is not so great. The breakthroughs occur in fields in which the jury is out. You don't know if it can be done or not.
Sure.
But surely they can't work in areas where you know it can't work, all right, where you are violating the second principle of thermodynamics. I mean, it would be kind of tough to go against that. So I don't think there is a real discontinuity. That is that you should carry out very advanced things, allow for failures, and then go ahead with your production capability, which is what supports you, right? I mean, it's...
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I am sorry, but I'm told by my boss there that...
Thank you very much.